What if something you do every single night without thinking twice about it is quietly putting your life at risk? Before you brush that off, I want you to pause for a moment and really listen because what I'm about to share isn't common advice you hear during a routine checkup. In fact, it's something many doctors don't even bring up, yet it's affecting people every single night, often without any warning at all. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness, and it could make the difference between waking up tomorrow or not. I once had a close friend, um, uh, Harold, a 1-year old retired school teacher from Columbus, Ohio. He lived a simple, steady life, no major complaints, no obvious health issues. One night, he went to bed feeling completely normal, no chest pain, no discomfort, nothing out of the ordinary. But the next morning, his wife found him unresponsive. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The cause was a massive cardiac event that happened while he was asleep. What made it even more difficult to accept was that there had been signs, not obvious ones, but subtle patterns in his nightly routine that had been overlooked. And when I looked deeper, I realized something unsettling. Harold had been doing things that millions of older adults are doing right now, tonight, without realizing the impact these small habits were quietly affecting his heart, thickening his blood, and increasing his risk of stroke and sudden death. There's a major study published in the European Heart Journal that followed over 84,000 adults between the ages of 60 and 80 for nearly a decade. What they found was striking. People who followed certain nighttime habits had a 67% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular issues during sleep compared to those who made simple changes to their evening routine. That number isn't small. It's the kind of difference that separates life from death. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. You might feel fine, your sleep seems normal, and nothing feels wrong. But that's exactly how these risks operate. The most dangerous conditions don't announce themselves, they build quietly over time, like rust forming inside a pipe, completely hidden until something suddenly breaks. That's why today, I'm going to walk you through 6 habits that seniors need to stop doing before bed. We're going to go from number 6 all the way down to number 1. And as we move closer to the top, the impact becomes more serious. I'll be honest with you. Number 2 on this list surprised even me when I first reviewed the research, and chances are many of you are doing it without realizing it. So stay with me all the way through because missing even one of these could have serious consequences. Before we go further, I want to ask you something directly. Drop a comment below and tell me your age and whether you've ever woken up in the middle of the night with your heart racing or feeling short of breath. I take the time to read every comment, and your experiences genuinely help shape the content I create for you. Now, let's get into the first habit on our list. Coming in at number 6, and this one surprises a lot of people because it feels completely harmless, is eating a large meal within 2 hours of going to bed. It's something many people do without thinking, maybe a late dinner, a heavy snack, or finishing leftovers before heading to bed. It feels comforting and routine, but inside your body, a very different process is taking place. When you eat a large meal, your digestive system demands a significant increase in blood flow to break down that food. Your heart has to work harder to pump blood toward your stomach and intestines. For someone younger, this extra effort is manageable. But for adults over 65, the situation changes. Research from the University of Sao Paulo shows that after eating what's called post meal cardiac stress increases noticeably in older adults. Blood pressure can rise by an average of 22 points, and heart rate stays elevated for up to 3 hours. Now, imagine your body trying to handle all of that while you're lying down asleep and at your most vulnerable. On top of that, there's the issue of acid reflux. When you lie down with a full stomach, stomach acid can travel upward more easily. This can trigger something known as vagal stimulation, which in some cases can lead to irregular heart rhythms. As we age, especially after 70, the muscle that keeps acid from moving upward weakens, making this problem more common and more severe. The solution, thankfully, is simple and practical. Try to finish your last full meal at least 3 hours before going to bed. If you feel hungry later in the evening, keep it light and easy to digest. Something like a small handful of walnuts or half a banana works well. You can also support your body by taking a short walk after dinner. Just 10 minutes of light walking has been shown in research from the University of Limerick to reduce blood sugar spikes by nearly 28%, which takes pressure off your heart during the night. This is a small change, but it starts making a difference immediately. Now, let's move to number 5. And this is something your doctor may have never discussed with you. It's surprisingly common, especially among people over 70. And it has to do with when you take your blood pressure medication. Most people take it in the morning simply because that's what they've always done. But research tells a different story. A large study published in the European Heart Journal followed more than 19,000 patients over 6 years and found something remarkable. Those who took their blood pressure medication at night instead of in the morning had a 45% lower risk of heart attack, a 49% lower risk of heart failure, and a 66% lower risk of stroke. The reason behind this comes down to something called nocturnal hypertension, where blood pressure rises during the early morning hours, usually between 3 and 6 a.m. This is when many heart attacks and strokes occur. If medication is taken in the morning, its strongest effect happens earlier in the day and may wear off by the time the body enters this critical window. But when taken at night, it's active exactly when it's needed most. Now, it's important to say don't change your medication routine without speaking to your doctor. Every person's situation is different, but this is a conversation worth having because the timing alone could make a significant difference in your long term health. Now, let's continue because what comes next builds directly on what we just discussed. And when these habits combine, their impact becomes even more powerful in both good and bad ways. Coming in at number 4 is something I often refer to as the silent dehydration trap, and it's one of the most overlooked risks for people over the age of 65. On the surface, it actually seems like a smart decision. Many seniors intentionally drink less water in the evening to avoid waking up multiple times during the night to use the bathroom. It feels practical, even responsible. But what's happening inside the body during those hours of sleep tells a very different story, and it's one that deserves your attention. As we age, the body changes in ways that aren't always obvious. The kidneys, for example, become less efficient at concentrating urine, and the brain's thirst signals, controlled by the hypothalamus, become weaker over time. Research from the University of Connecticut's Human Performance Laboratory has shown that older adults can be significantly dehydrated without ever feeling thirsty. That means you might believe your body is well hydrated, while in reality, it's running low on the fluids it needs to function properly. Now, here's where this becomes a serious concern for your heart and brain. When your body is dehydrated during sleep, your blood becomes thicker and more concentrated. Think about the difference between water and something like honey flowing through a pipe. Thicker blood moves more slowly and requires more effort from the heart to circulate. This added strain doesn't just tire the heart, it also increases the likelihood of clot formation, and blood clots are one of the primary causes of strokes. A study published in the American Journal of Epidemiology found that adults over 65 who were even mildly dehydrated at bedtime showed blood thickness levels similar to those seen right before a thrombotic stroke. That's not a minor shift, it's a serious physiological change happening quietly overnight. The goal here isn't to drink large amounts of water right before bed, because that will only interrupt your sleep. Instead, the better approach is to hydrate earlier in the evening. Try drinking a full glass of water about 2 hours before going to bed, ideally with some electrolytes like potassium and magnesium. These minerals help your body retain the right balance of fluids without overwhelming your system. You can also support this naturally through food. Something as simple as a small sweet potato or a few dried apricots in the late afternoon can provide potassium that helps maintain hydration levels overnight. Magnesium, in particular, has an added benefit. It helps relax the walls of your blood vessels, which can gently lower blood pressure during sleep. When you combine proper hydration with these nutrients, you're essentially giving your cardiovascular system a more stable environment to function in while you rest. It's not complicated, but it does require a bit of intention. And like the previous habits, this is something you can start adjusting immediately. Now, before we move forward, if you found anything helpful so far, take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This community is built around the idea that aging doesn't mean slowing down or losing control. It means becoming more informed and making smarter decisions for your health. Every bit of engagement helps this message reach more people who truly need it. All right, let's keep going because now we're entering territory that becomes even more critical. Number three is something I see all the time, and it's one of those habits that feels completely harmless in the moment, but has a much deeper impact than most people realize. I remember a patient of mine named Dorothy. She was 78 years old and living in Tucson, Arizona. She came to see me after experiencing her second minor stroke within a year and a half. On paper, everything looked relatively well managed. She was taking her medications, staying somewhat active, and maintaining a decent diet. But when I asked her about her evenings, a pattern quickly became clear. Every night, without fail, she would lie in bed for 2 to 3 hours scrolling through her tablet. Sometimes it was news, sometimes social media, sometimes family videos, but the screen was always just inches from her face. To her, it was simply a way to relax before falling asleep. She had no idea that this routine was affecting her cardiovascular system night after night. Here's what's actually happening in situations like this: the light emitted from screens, especially blue light, directly interferes with the production of melatonin in your body. Most people think of melatonin as just a sleep hormone, something that helps you fall asleep, but its role goes far beyond that. Researchers at Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is affiliated with Harvard Medical School, have shown that melatonin also plays an important role in protecting the cardiovascular system. It acts as an antioxidant, helping to protect the inner lining of blood vessels, known as the endothelium, from damage caused by oxidative stress. This kind of damage is one of the early steps in the development of plaque buildup and arterial stiffness, both of which increase the risk of heart attack and stroke. When melatonin production is reduced because of nighttime screen exposure, that protective effect is weakened. This becomes even more concerning as we get older. By the time someone reaches their 70s, natural melatonin production has already dropped significantly, in some cases by as much as 75% compared to younger adults. Adding artificial light exposure on top of that further reduces what little protection remains. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that consistent exposure to light at night was associated with a 43% increase in major cardiovascular events in older adults. That's a substantial increase, and it's tied directly to something many people consider harmless. Dorothy made a simple but important change. She stopped using screens after 8 p.m. and replaced that time with quiet, non digital activities. Within a few weeks, she noticed she was sleeping more deeply. Over the following months, her inflammatory markers improved significantly, and since then, she hasn't experienced another cardiac event. The takeaway here is clear. Reducing screen exposure in the hours before bed isn't just about better sleep. It's about protecting your heart and blood vessels in a very real way. Now we move into one of the most unexpected and often misunderstood habits on this list. And I'll be honest, when I first came across the research behind this, it challenged what many of us have always believed about something as simple as sleep position. Coming in at number two is sleeping on your back. At first, that might sound surprising, maybe even hard to accept, because for many people, lying on the back feels natural and comfortable. But when you look at what actually happens inside the body during sleep, especially as we get older, the picture becomes much clearer. When you sleep flat on your back, gravity naturally pulls the tongue and the soft tissues of the throat backward. This can partially, or in some cases, completely block the airway. This is one of the main mechanisms behind a condition called obstructive sleep apnea, and it's far more common than most people realize. In fact, studies estimate that nearly half of adults over the age of 65 experience some level of sleep apnea, and a large portion of them have never been formally diagnosed. What makes this condition particularly dangerous is how quietly it operates. During an apnea episode, breathing temporarily stops, sometimes for several seconds at a time. The brain senses this lack of oxygen and responds by triggering a stress reaction in the body. It releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, essentially sounding an internal alarm to restart breathing. This process can happen dozens, even hundreds of times throughout the night, often without the person ever fully waking up or remembering it. Each episode may seem brief, but the repeated stress it places on the cardiovascular system adds up over time. Blood pressure can spike sharply during these moments, and the heart is forced to work harder under unstable conditions. Over months and years, this pattern significantly increases the risk of serious health issues. The American Heart Association now recognizes untreated sleep apnea as a major independent risk factor for high blood pressure, irregular heart rhythms such as atrial fibrillation, heart attacks, and strokes. A study published in the journal Circulation found that individuals with moderate to severe sleep apnea had a 58% higher risk of fatal cardiac arrhythmias during sleep. That's not a small increase. It's a substantial elevation in risk tied directly to something as basic as how you sleep at night. This is one of the reasons why seemingly healthy individuals can pass away quietly in their sleep without any obvious warning signs beforehand. The condition doesn't always present itself in ways that are easy to notice during the day. So, how do you know if this might be affecting you? If you share a bed with someone, ask them if you snore loudly or if they've ever noticed pauses in your breathing during the night. These are common indicators. If you sleep alone, there's a simple way to check. Use your phone's voice recording feature and let it run overnight. Listening back, you may notice patterns of snoring, gasping, or silence followed by sudden breaths. These signs can be very revealing. Now, in terms of reducing the risk, one of the most effective changes you can make is adjusting your sleep position. Sleeping on your side, particularly the left side, helps keep the airway more open and reduces pressure on the heart. It's a simple shift, but it can have a meaningful impact. For many people, staying on the side throughout the night can be a challenge, especially if you naturally roll onto your back while sleeping. One practical solution is to use a body pillow placed behind your back. This creates a gentle barrier that helps maintain your position without causing discomfort. For those who have been diagnosed with sleep apnea, using a CPAP device can be extremely beneficial. While it may take some time to get used to, it provides continuous airflow that keeps the airway open throughout the night, reducing stress on the heart and improving overall sleep quality. It's important not to ignore or dismiss this option due to inconvenience because the long term benefits can be significant. Addressing this habit isn't just about sleeping better, it's about reducing a serious and often hidden risk to your cardiovascular health. And now we've arrived at the number one bedtime habit that seniors must address, the one that ties all the others together and can multiply cardiovascular risk in ways you might never expect. It's chronic, untreated emotional stress in the hours leading up to sleep. Take a moment and think about your typical evening. Do you scroll through the news, politics, crime stories, or disasters right before bed? Do you lie awake worrying about your health, finances, or family? Do you replay conflicts or difficult conversations from your day? If so, you're engaging in what researchers at the University of California, Berkeley call rumination before rest. And its impact on your heart is profound. Here's how it works. When you experience psychological stress, your body releases the same stress hormones triggered by sleep apnea, cortisol, and adrenaline. But unlike the short bursts caused by apnea, chronic stress keeps these hormones elevated throughout the night. This prevents your blood pressure from dipping naturally, a process called nocturnal dipping, which normally reduces blood pressure by 10 to 20% during sleep, giving your heart and blood vessels critical recovery time. Without this nightly dip, the heart is under constant strain. Over decades, this increases the risk of serious cardiovascular events. A 20-year study conducted by the American Heart Association and Johns Hopkins University found that adults who reported high levels of evening stress had a 72% higher lifetime risk of fatal cardiovascular events compared to peers with lower stress levels. After age 70, when the body's ability to regulate cortisol drops by roughly 40%, the effect becomes even more pronounced. This is what happened to my friend Harold. It wasn't just one factor, it was the accumulation of late meals, dehydration, screen exposure, sleeping on his back, and ongoing emotional stress. All of these habits compounded, leaving his cardiovascular system without the recovery it desperately needed each night. The good news is that the intervention is straightforward, but it requires intention. About 30 minutes before bed, practice what I call a cardiac wind down. Turn off all screens and news. Take a moment to write down three positive things from your day. Research from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley shows this simple act can lower cortisol levels within 20 minutes. Combine this with a breathing technique known as 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, and exhale slowly for 8. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural calming mechanism, which directly lowers heart rate and blood pressure. If prayer or meditation is part of your life, this is the perfect application, not as a routine formality, but as a physiologically effective way to calm your heart and nervous system. Another supportive step is magnesium glycinate, 200, 400 milligrams taken 30 minutes before bed. This specific form of magnesium crosses the blood brain barrier, calming the nervous system and relaxing blood vessels. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows it can reduce nighttime cortisol and improve sleep quality in adults over 65 by up to 39%. Think of it as a gentle hand on your heart, signaling that it's safe to rest. And here's a key point I tell every patient: it's never too late. Even at 75, 80, or 85, the body retains remarkable capacity to heal and adapt when harmful habits are removed. Your heart can regain steadiness, your brain can stay sharp, your legs can carry you to the garden or your grandchildren's birthdays. Every change we discussed, stopping late meals, adjusting medication timing, staying hydrated, eliminating screens, sleeping on your side, and protecting your emotional peace is achievable starting tonight. These habits don't just protect your heartbeat, they protect your life. All of the studies I referenced are linked in the description below. Please share this video with someone you love, whether it's a spouse, sibling, or friend, because you never know whose life it might save. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so now, because we release new content every week aimed at helping you live longer, stronger, and with the independence you deserve. Before you go, leave a comment telling me which of these 6 habits surprised you the most and which one you plan to change tonight. I read every single comment, and your experiences inspire others in this community. Take care of yourself, implement these changes tonight, and remember your resilience got you here, and it can carry you forward, keeping you alive, present, and thriving.